Roxy Music, possibly along with Bowie, were the first indicator that something new was maybe happening in the UK anyway. There was a schism within popular music as far as the UK was concerned at the time. The first thing that probably emerged in the 70s, their remit was predominantly to report on so-called progressive music, and the major exponents would be the big acts like Jethro Tull, Yes, Pink Floyd, etc., etc., etc.
Progressive rock was basically musicians who were really good at playing their instruments, who were up to classical standards or beyond. The bulk of the bands who were playing, they all had long hair, beards, denims. Obviously, its appeal was male. The incredible thing about Roxy Music is that from the very beginning, from the very word go, they appealed to women as well.
The brainchild of singer and songwriter Bryan Ferry, the group were unlike anything on the musical landscape at the time. The majority of its members were art school graduates, and together they reimagined the very concept of the rock band and the music it could create. And key to this was synth player Brian Eno, then known only as Eno, whose striking image and experiments with new technology would further distance the band from their contemporaries. In June 1972, their debut album was released, introducing an act who seemed both a response to rock and roll's past as well as a beacon for its possible future.
Roxy Music's first album is one of the great debut albums in the history of music. Just the cover of the album alone sets it completely apart from anything else. It was erotic, but it wasn't porn, but it was something else. It was more lifestyle. This is a world of life, glasses of champagne, flowers, gold records, incredible looking women. Pink and blue are those kind of colours that you'd never see that were more associated with women's magazines. It was very strange. But then you open the album up and you see these weird characters inside. You know, you think, God, look what these guys look like. They look so weird looking.
You had Bryan Ferry with a 50s quiff and also with a Lorex jacket. So he wasn't quite the 50s Elvis. He was Elvis, but with a sort of 70s look about him. Then you had Eno. I mean, Eno was unique. I mean, visually, he was beyond flamboyance. Eno was more flamboyant than probably anybody else in rock. Even Bowie, I think he was more flamboyant than Bowie. I mean, there was Eno with feathers, apricot lipstick, this mauve kind of over-the-top eyeshadow. He was androgynous. He could have just walked out of a hospital, he was so thin. So he embodied a kind of like new glam rock of the 70s. The others, you could see elements of the 50s. They didn't quite seem to fit together, and yet they did. And part of the reason that they did was that the music reflected the image in a strange sense. Via the saxophone and Mackay, you also had 60s rhythms in there as well. So both the music and the image suggested 50s, 60s, 70s, 3 different decades. Possibly even the 40s, if you want to throw that in as well. I think only Bowie and Roxy were doing this kind of mix and matching of different styles. And a lot of it did come from their art school backgrounds as well. If you throw all that into the mix, you've got a unique concept. And that's what made Roxy very special at that time.
And Brian Eno's art school background in particular was key to making him such an unconventional figure within popular music. A graduate of both Ipswich and Winchester, where he had studied to become a painter, his main areas of interest musically prior to joining Roxy had been in the avant-garde and in the technical aspects of sound recording and audio manipulation. Although he had been interested in rock and roll and doo-wop from an early age and had been involved in a band during his grammar school days, he had never seriously considered entering the rock world until he was introduced into Roxy Music by one of its founding members, saxophonist and oboe player Andy Mackay, whom he had met while at art school. Eno's original role was as the group's technical advisor, brought in to record demos due to his knowledge of tape recorders and his stash of amps and equipment. His use of techniques drawn from the avant-garde allowed him to process